You can edit it if I don't start. Yeah. Okay. They might have just announced it. Yeah. I thought we'd have a lot fuller classroom. They said like 98 people were signed up. The previous one had more. Yeah, I don't know who was here from Comores. Set timer for 45 minutes. Jonathan, we're going to go ahead and start. Did they make an announcement?
Yeah, he did.
Okay. Okay. All right. Great. Hey, so good afternoon, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. I want to meet my counterpart here. This is Tim Fletcher. He's Regional Sales Manager for the Mid-Atlantic up to the Northeast. I'm Eric Bowman. I'm your Business Development for Sure Comfort. We're going to talk about SEER to SEER 2 transition that occurred this year, and then we're going to talk about A2Ls. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in, and I'll have time for questions at the end here.
And I represent the commercial product, so I'm going to be back down at the booth. If you guys want to come and talk to commercial after the seminar, I'll be happy to be down here and talking to you. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Tim. So, okay, this first slide gives you a historical perspective of how the Department of Energy, the DOE, and the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, is really guides this industry on what we're working on. So a lot of young guys, a couple old guys in here. I won't make that claim to anybody but me. I'm an old guy, right? So I do remember in 1992 when we went from 8 SEER to 10 SEER. That's kind of when the ball really got rolling from a residential regulatory changes. We went for another about 14 years before that 10 SEER went to 13 SEER in 2006. In 2015, we had a big change where that 13 went to 14 SEER, and don't forget that we changed refrigerants. That's governed by the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, and they passed the regulation that we had to go from R22 to R410A, okay? So the Department of Energy is responsible for telling our industry what the minimum efficiency levels are gonna be. And we went to regional standards in 2015. Regional standards means the South has different criteria than the North. Criteria is 14.3 SEER 2 for minimum efficiency in the South where you all reside. If you go a couple states up, it's only 13.4 SEER 2. So we're manufacturing a couple different products for different regions of the United States. In 2023, so last year, we had to redesign all of our equipment from 14 SEER to 14.3 SEER 2. And so every manufacturer, whether you're Sure Comfort, who is owned by Rheem Manufacturing, Train Carrier, York, Lennox, you name it, there's a set of specifications that we have to test to put that energy guide label on there that says this piece of equipment, this system meets 14.3 SEER 2. And we have those AHRI match systems that says we've tested it per those requirements, those regulations to be able to put that sticker on it. And then we get audited. Now, another thing that's happening real big and that we're working really hard on right now, and we'll talk more about it, is low GWP. That stands for low global warming potential. And we're going from R410A, that's about 1,400 global warming potential, down to the new requirements, you've got to be under 700. And that R410A may be 2,100. I got my numbers mixed up, but I'm sure the Comore guys told you what that is. But we're going to R54B. So it's been a lot of work on being a manufacturer to take your product and take it from 14 SEER to 14.3 SEER 2 in 23 in R410A, then turn around and redo that in 454B. So a lot of new products, a lot of new innovation. We use these major regulatory changes to not take a step back, but to move forward. So we totally redesigned our product from the inside, not so much the outside. Some of the major changes we did to get ready for low global warming and the SEER 2 requirement was we went from a 3/8 diameter outdoor coil to a 7 millimeter. 7 millimeter allowed us to keep the size relatively the same and take out some material, which is cost, okay? A big, huge capital investment by us to do that. We introduced a lot of new technology, and that new technology was Bluetooth and communication. Econet, and this icon you see here, means if that's on a product, I didn't bring a product guide with me, but a lot more of our products, when we went from SEER to SEER 2 now, are communicating and they're Bluetooth, which means for all you young guys and some older guys that are keeping up with technology, that allows you to call up our app when you're installing communicating equipment. Instead of looking at a set of gauges, getting your high and low pressure, you can look and calculating superheat and subcooling, you can look at your phone and do that, okay? And maybe not even set those gauges up. So that's the technology that we started to introduce when we went from SEER to SEER 2. We also introduced a lot more variable speed, and all of our controls that are communicating have that Bluetooth antenna on there so we can communicate with our thermostats and with the app. We also introduced a line of twin rotary compressors on our mid-tier efficiency and a lot of motor technology. So when the SEER went up from 14 SEER to 14.3 SEER 2, that was about a 10 to 15% increase. Well, where is that going to come from? So for 3-ton capacity, you got to do it for less watts, less work than what you previously had to do it when it was 14 SEER, right? So a lot of times we do that, we either use more coil, which takes more space. So we went to 7 millimeter to not increase our size. So we normally would go to a more efficient outdoor fan motor or indoor fan motor, and those were the constant torques or constant CFM motors. But the problem with the outdoor is those electronics were on the outside. So we used the SEER to SEER 2 transition to put those electronics, a lot of them that apply to the outdoor, on the inside of the control box, okay, and took those electronics off that motor, which should be another increase in reliability. So a lot of new, innovative, time savings, labor savings, service-friendly features were released between SEER and SEER 2, okay, to hopefully make your day and week go better throughout. Now, there's been a big push driven by our federal government, Department of Energy, on heat pumps. Probably there will be a time in you all's life that we will not have any air conditioners, straight cool air conditioners. It will probably be mandatory that it will be a heat pump. There's already tax credits, utility rebates, maybe some federal rebates coming that really is going to steer the homeowner to heat pumps. That's probably a precursor than it just being regulated that all you can put in is heat pumps, right? So we see as time goes on a lot more heat pumps, and we're getting ready for that today, not resting on our laurels, and we got more heat pumps in the lineup than we ever have. So right now, Sure Comfort at 14.3 SEER 2 and 15.2 SEER 2, where the tax credit starts coming into play, those are two-stage machines. We don't have a single-stage heat pump anymore. We did that for two reasons. for comfort, but also to keep that size small, because you do get benefits for having multiple stages when it goes to calculation of that SEER 2, okay? So all of our heat pumps are a minimum of 2-stage using the Copeland Ultratech compressor. But in our 17 SEER, which is our universal heat pump, we got it downstairs, that's inverter. Our 16 SEER 2 is inverter, and our 18 to 19 fully modulating heat pump is inverter 2. That all helps with comfort. Those machines, a lot of them, not the entry level, not the 14.3 SEER 2, but starting at 15, all are eligible for a tax credit. That's up to $2,000 that homeowner could save if they qualify. I'm not a tax professional, but we'll tell you which ones meet the efficiency requirements. For your area, it's 15.2 SEER 2, 11.7 EER 2, and 7.8 HSPF 2 to claim that tax credit. Also, we're seeing with more mini splits coming into the market, we're hearing a lot from the contractors that they like that space savings and that footprint of a mini split. And more mini split type equipment have been rated with ducted air handlers or ducted furnaces and coils. And you know, those two markets are kind of merging. So we have introduced a couple of horizontal discharge opposed to top discharge into our solutions, okay? So we have a choice now to whether go with the conventional top discharge in many of the sizes to a horizontal discharge, okay? That if you got zero lot lines could help out in tight space constrained areas. And then like I said, we brought in a lot of communication via Bluetooth, and the outdoor product communicating with the indoor product, communicating with the thermostat, so no matter where you're at, and with the app, you can figure out without walking up to the attic or down to the basement or outside, depending on where you are. You don't necessarily have to go to that equipment to see what's going on because it's communicating, and as long as you're within a certain distance, you're communicating via your Bluetooth, via your iPhone or your Android, okay? So a lot of that's been driven down into, you know, basically the market split up between entry level, lowest cost solutions to a mid-tier, you know, kind of a medium and to a high tier. And we've driven down those communications into our mid-tier line that used to, in the SEER days, when we went to SEER 2 days, we drove that communication down into the mid-tier, not the lowest cost, but the mid-tier, okay? But you got to consider what you're paying for that and some of the labor savings and service savings that comes along with that communication, okay? So just to talk about our heat pump lineup real quick, because that's probably where this ship is heading. You see, this is our upper line. It's got a unit replacement warranty, conditional. What's that condition? If the compressor fails, we'll replace that unit if it's from 0 to 10 years, right? Most entry-level equipment, as you'll see here, comes 5 years out of the box. The homeowner or the contractor registers it, and it goes to 10 years, parts, right? But this is a unit replacement at 18 SEER 2 and 16 SEER 2. You can see those are modulating equipment. So everybody's 18, 19, 20 SEER 2 equipment is large. We got a 2-ton down there that's about this size, okay? Both outdoor and indoor tends to grow to get the maximum SEER 2 requirements. But what we did on our mid-tier 16 SEER line, we weren't shooting for the highest SEER 2. We were shooting for the smallest outdoor solution at 16 SEER, which is more like 16 SEER 2 is more like 17, 18 SEER, right? So still a very efficient piece of equipment, but we did it to get the smallest 16 SEER outdoor and indoor solution in the marketplace today. We did that with a twin rotary, and that carries that unit replacement as well. And most of these machines, depending on the matchup, you gotta be careful there, are eligible for that tax credit. We just now are introducing what we call our universal design, and this is where a paradigm shift comes in. So this is an 1819 SEER 2 product, fully communicating, fully modulating when it has our matchups with our indoor. So that's the high end, right? Well, this would also work universally on all applications with an old 15-year-old single-stage air handler, if you will. And you are legally, because there's a test method you can run today as a manufacturer and make it legal to leave that indoor piece of equipment that may be 10, 15, 20 years old, as long as it's R410A, and just change that outdoor and be legal for possibly a lower cost solution for the homeowner. But if you think about it, what happens when that old indoor fails, because it might be 10, 15, 20 years old, then you can upgrade that homeowner with the right matchup to an 1819 SEER, okay? So it's kind of spreading that cost. You know, system solutions have become more and more cost effective. Why is that? There's inflationary pressures. We've gone from SEER to SEER 2. That took more efficient motors, more efficient compressors, typically more indoor copper and aluminum in your evaporator, potentially more copper and aluminum in your outdoor. That raises the price. And then you got manufacturers that have to employ and keep working overtime and everything to get all this work done. That takes capital. So there's a lot of pressures on this industry, not just sheer comfort of why some of these prices are going up. It's higher efficient. We have inflationary pressures. And then we got all the capital investments that there has to be a return on the investments. So whether you're Sure Comfort, Train, Carrier, York, and Lennox, it's hard to keep those prices down, and the equipment is becoming more expensive. So this universal heat pump may help with that, depending on a couple of variables that we'll get into a little bit later. So our entry level is the 2-stage, comes with 10-year. Then the lowest cost tax credit solution out there is our 15 SEER 2 product. It comes with a 10-year, and then we got a product that's being displaced that I'm not even going to mention. So I just said the federal government is really pushing this industry and incentivizing this industry to go towards heat pumps. But there's also in this mid-Atlantic area dual fuel solution, right? That's a heat pump. So a typical solution is a heat pump with an air handler that has electric heat strip. So as it gets too cold, that heat pump can't keep up. It diminishes. There's a diminishing returns, right, on the BTUs it's producing. So your electric heat has to kick on. An alternative to that is kick on a gas furnace, and that's called dual fuel. Sure Comfort has the strong line of builder, what we call entry-level builder grade to high end of base, mid-tier, and high-tier solutions, and a lot of dual fuel matchups with that heat pump product line that you have. So I mentioned about this universal heat pump. One thing to note on this is there's a new rating called Cold Climate. This is the first heat pump we have in our lineup that meets cold climate. That means to be able to say your cold climate rating is that you get 70% capacity at 5 degrees Fahrenheit, okay? That's pretty good for especially at the cost of that product line. But what happens below 5 degrees, it's nice to have that backup gas heat that puts out 120, 130, 140 degree supply air temperature instead of that heat pump. So I mentioned tax credits. We have a lot of qualifying equipment. We're still awaiting news. There was this thing called the Inflation Reduction Act signed a couple years ago that provided all this money for these high efficient heat pumps. But most states, and the federal government link there, they haven't defined how to get that rebate into the homeowner's hands. So we're awaiting that. If this goes through in North Carolina, most likely for qualifying home buyers, that probably will exclude air conditioning and push them to all heat pumps, because depending on your medium income, it could be up to $8,000 for qualifying heat pump systems. That goes a long way of paying for the whole thing, right? Or up to $4,000 if you're a higher income level and there's an income level that you don't get any rebates, okay? So we're awaiting that criteria to be released. This just shows that 15.2 SEER 2 solution is a very cost-effective way to get into the tax credit. The game is changing a little bit with that new universal heat pump that we're rolling out as we speak. So let's talk about this universal heat pump real quick. This is very flexible. What's universal mean? Well, it means everything. All is some of the definitions you hear when you look up the word universal. So as I said, you could legally change out this with the test method we followed to go on any third-party air handler, furnace and coil, and 24-volt stat, meaning you're just changing out the outdoor and it's going to work with whatever's in your house. That's the low end. To then, when you match up with our rated air handlers and rated gas furnaces and coils, that gets up to 19 SEER 2, depending on the tonnage and what you got it matched up to. We're able to make this universal heat pump claim because we followed the DOE procedure and we got it rated as a coil-only solution. So this is our indoor coil, which means if you don't want to put a higher mid-tier or higher end furnace, because we got that coil only that gets 14.3 SEER 2, you could put a constant torque furnace in there and operate just great and be at a lower price point. So just a huge broad range of application and cost points with that universal heat pump. So let's go into the low global warming potential, what's going to be 454B for us and the rest of the industry. There's one exception, and that's Daikin, Goodman, and Amana. They're going with R32. I have heard recently that they're reconsidering having 454B because the rest of the industry is going in that direction. The rest of the industry is Sure Comfort, Rheem, Rude, Wright, Train Carrier, York, Lennox is all going 454B. But so there's a phase on going on right now. I hear through distribution I meet with that R410A, the price per drum is pretty reasonable right now. But they're starting, the people, Chemours of the world and all that manufacture that R410A, there's a 40% reduction in the amount that they can produce based off 2006 numbers, okay? In 2006, the industry was half as big as it is now. So it's probably greater than 40%. So you're going to start seeing that R410A over time increase more and more and more, okay? And 454B is coming into it. So it tracks down. It's going to be around for a long time, but I'm going to tell you some reasons why. But let's talk first about some of the technology that we had to introduce with 454B. 454B is what we call mildly flammable, okay? And we're required on our indoor coil and our indoor air handler to have this A2L, that's 454B sensor. So if we spring a leak on the inside, and as a mildly flammable air conditioner, we want to sense that from a safety standpoint. This is not propane. This is not natural gas. There's a lot of homes with propane and natural gas. There's no sensors anywhere, right? So, but on this mildly flammable, and the way I look at it is we always want to have safety first, but mildly flammable is a lot closer to non-flammable than it is flammable, okay? Which means there's a video produced by Hardy. They're a distributor association, and they have this PTAC unit, you know, like in a hotel room, so a small space, and it's just spewing out 454B, and there's an ignition source, a Bic lighter. And you can see this flame kind of slowly propagate, kind of go in and out, but then once the Bic lighter shuts off, the flame goes out. So if you don't have an ignition source, it doesn't sustain itself, okay? So there is even some lobbying going on to take that requirement out because those sensors aren't cheap. So your indoor coil and your air handler, where this is required, and your packaged equipment got to have these sensors, so that adds cost to the product. We're just following the regulations that were written, right? So the compressors look identical to what they are, but there's probably some different O-rings and different things to be compatible with 454B versus R410A. Same with the TX valve. The model numbers will change, but it's really the same type of TX valve that we're used to. And then motors and contractors have to have what's basically layman's term, a spark rating, meaning that it doesn't spark, okay? Because you don't want sparks around that mildly flammable gas in the best case scenario. So on our outdoor equipment, things look physically the same between R410A and R54B. You will have those new compressors. You know, Copeland changes the model number to make it 454B compatible. The TX valves on heat pumps will have different. But besides that, there's no sensors on the outdoor. It's outside. We're not too worried about it. But when you go to indoor, that's where we introduce the sensor, the TX valve number change, and there's some bracket to hold that sensor and some wires. So what happens if this indoor coil springs a leak? That sensor senses it. It shuts off the compressor because we want to stop pumping that gas, right? And we run the indoor fan motor to dissipate, you know, and do that. It's kind of like a high pressure or low pressure. You know, you kick out on high pressure, it will go back 5-10 minutes later and try again. If it resets, if it doesn't reset, then usually there's some 3 strikes you're out type logic in our controls. It's kind of how that sensor is going to work. So if the gas is all dissipated out and it doesn't sense the gas, then it'll start over again. Might not cool if all the gas leaked out, but that's kind of the methodology behind that. And then the package units have to have that sensor. Of course, we'll have new compressor model numbers and new TX valve. So we put a letter in all of our condensers and heat pumps back when we went from SEER to SEER 2. That letter is a Z. So anything with a Z in it means R410A for sure comfort. Our model numbers will look identical when we switch from R410A to R54B, but instead of having a Z, we'll have a Y. So you don't have to relearn. You got used to an SP14AZ36 AJ1NA or AJ2NA. You don't have to do that. It's just going to be a Z to a Y for indoor and outdoor in our model numbers. So here's where things, today we produce equipment with one refrigerant. It's called R410A. R410A is not going away. Why? The Department of Energy did something that I agree with and is pretty smart, is we have 14 years of R410A product that needs to be serviced, right? So we will continue to build that R410A component. What's a component? It's that outdoor condenser or heat pump. It's that evaporator coil. It's that air handler, right? We'll still be able to build those, but we'll build them as a component. It will become a replacement part virtually, right? Just like you have a replacement capacitor, replacement control board. These will kind of become replacement components. Probably won't carry the 10-year warranty. It'll be more like a part warranty. Playing that one out, we'll do what the industry does, but we will still have to manufacture R410A condensers, heat pumps, coils, and air handlers. And we'll shift over because everything new construction come 2026 will have to be an A2L solution, right? But you will be legal to service that existing systems that are out there. And we'll talk more about that. There's really 3 definitions that we got to know. One is the product. In our world, that means packaged equipment. We will produce our last R410A package equipment, residential, commercial, at the end of this year, 12/31. But we have 3 years to sell that R410A packaged equipment, residential, single phase, or 3-phase. Systems, that looks like a mini split, that looks like a ducted systems, right? ACR is still buying R410A. Will they have those R410A systems likely left over next year? Yes. You as a contractor will be able to install a full system R410A solution through 2025. But in 2026, you can only replace a component. You can't replace a whole system. In 2026, that whole system will need to be for an add-on replacement for, I live in a 30-year-old home. When my air conditioner to be changed out, and it's 2026, legally that has to be R54B. In 2025, if I was getting a new unit, I would want it to be R54B, but a homeowner can choose to still put in R410A through 2025, okay? And that will help distributors and contractors get rid of that inventory. So here's kind of what it looks like from a package unit standpoint. We stopped building R410A this year. We got 3 years to sell it, whether you're a manufacturer, a distributor, or a contractor. Then in 2028, no-go, those become boat anchors. R410A, we start building it at the end of this year, and we can sell that until the refrigerant changes. For a system, we build just like we're building now to the end of this year, but in 2025, we got to start putting that service sticker in there saying this can only be installed as a component, okay? And then we start building our 454B. I got some schedules in here, middle of this year. If I was a contractor, maybe there's an early adopter homeowner, but I'm getting through the cooling season with R410A and worrying about this probably in the fall, right? And then this is where the components come in. So we will continue to build what we're building now, be identical to it. We may have a part number on there instead of a model number, probably carry a different warranty, but we'll build that product to service that base of equipment that's been out there for the last 14 years, okay? And that's perfectly legal. That's in the law. So when does A2L 454B start rolling out? Our first ship for 14.3 SEER 2 heat pumps is mid-July. Then all of our air conditioners come out in August. We got some mid-tier coming out in October, and the high-end stuff is coming out at the end of the cooling season in August. Pretty much the same with residential package. This universal heat pump I talked about earlier, we're releasing that in R410A, and then we'll have the A2L universal heat pumps coming out at the end of this year. Commercially, we're going to have a last order of commercial equipment come April. We'll build those last orders through the end of the year, and then we shift over, and you can see that we have gas electrics and heat pumps and AC entry level efficiency levels, and then some higher end coming out towards the end. Training, got a lot of training coming out. Matter of fact, we're kicking that off with A2L April 8th with all of our distribution, and an annual meeting we have on the technical side of things to teach them, and then they come out and teach you, right? So that's ongoing, and that's really what I wanted to talk about. So I got about 15 minutes for any questions. Monoblock technology.
In other words, the outdoor picture a chiller, when that's on the outdoor unit, instead of the refrigerant stays in the outdoor unit, instead it has the heat exchanger. So you have now it's going to be running glycol to the air handler. So you're going to have chilled water because it's a heat pump, and you're going to have hot water. I was reading up on the technology, and they said that's the way the heat pumps are now eventually going to go. No more refrigerant will be going to the indoor units, and all the refrigerant will be self-contained. And same result at the sensor, if it ever detects a leak, the condenser fan motor will run, venting it away. This way, no refrigerant will be inside the house to eliminate it. So just figure, just a simple heat exchanger, so you're going to have chilled water, or you're going to have hot water, and it has the same efficiency, and you can get down to, say, minus 32 Celsius for heat.
Yeah, so what I'm talking about today is direct expansion air conditioning, single phase stuff. Rheem Manufacturing, Sure Comfort, we're not in the chiller business, and we're not in geothermal or anything like that. We're not, we're circulating refrigerant and air, and so I'm not aware of any of that technology. I imagine
Well, it's
there's,
European.
yeah, I imagine there's some niches.
Mitsubishi has it and another company.
So one thing that I kind of skimmed over, let's go back to it, and because that could be, so, you know, we're going from R410A that is not flammable to 454B that is lower global warming, right? That is mildly flammable. So what could be coming next? I thought I showed it on this chart, but so this is in 2025, this year, we introduced the low GWP out in 2030, 2032, 2033, there is ultra low GWP refrigerant coming out. So what might that be? It's probably going to be flammable. So I said mildly flammable is far away from flammable and a lot closer to non-flammable. But when you go to this ultra low GWP, somebody said propane, that might be, you know, a type of solution that comes in. We're not looking out that far today, but with today's discussion, so I'm not in research and development anymore. I'm kind of working on today's problem and 18 months out, right? And selling this stuff. So I'm not familiar. I have heard of that, but with this low GWP and with the knowledge base we have out there, it's kind of business as usual, except with the exception of that sensor, but it's still going to have the same operating pressures or very close, negligible differences between R410A and 454B, and this thing's going to operate just like the systems you're installing today, and really the systems you've really installed, just a higher efficiency minimum requirements that you're used to doing, and you're seeing the same pressures, same superheats and subcoolings, and same airflows and things of that sort, and we are circulating refrigerant into the indoors. Okay, great question. Any other stuff? So we generally use these regulatory changes to move that ball forward, and we recognize with inflationary pressures, with higher efficiency, which raises cost, we're very aware that we want it to stay with the DX solution in the home, and that universal heat pump may be able to, as inflation goes up and the cost of eggs and milk and all that, and there's less money to maintain your home, we're trying to bring those costs down, and that universal heat pump may be a solution to keep that homeowner in air conditioners and going down the street to Walmart to buy window units, which are also going through a lot of changes, aren't near as cheap as they used to be either, but trying to stay in the game. But it's getting interesting, and that universal heat pump, as that test procedure is adopted more and more, could take you from a system change out to a component change out to make it more affordable for the homeowner as time goes on. So, yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I came in at I didn't know you started. Are you gonna have stub outs on the units versus?
Yeah, so if you look at that universal heat pump, or are you going to the, you know, mechanical fitting opposed to braze, that's ready to go for that mechanical fitting. We, on our traditional top discharge unit, we're adding a little bit of length. We're still having the bell on it, but when you cut that bell out, there'll be enough length that you could use a press fit. Okay, so that's changing. It's not totally required, even though we're working with a mildly flammable, you know, so you take the conservative approach and time savings and things, that's becoming much more common, and we're accommodating that. But there's still a lot of people that still haven't invested in that equipment yet, and we got to keep them going too. Okay. Okay. All right, guys, you can talk to your ACR guys. They're gonna, as time goes on, and especially after April 8th, they'll be educated on that universal heat pump, and all the A2L stuff, so they'll be ready to go.